Sadly, we are now able to confirm that yesterday we recovered Nicola Bulley from the River Wyre. Nicola's family have been informed and are of course devastated.
Nicola's family have asked that we release the following statement on their behalf as follows. We will never be able to comprehend what Nikki had gone through in her last moments, and that will never leave us. We'll never forget Nikki. How could we? She was the centre of our world. She was the one who made our lives so special, and nothing will cast a shadow over that.
Okay, but you never specifically searched that part of the river where she was found?
Yes, we did, Dan. We trawled like the police every day with our sonar. They did with their sonar, and there was no sign of Nicola on the under the water, I should say, not in the reeds. Our remit was not searching the riverbank or the reeds. I'll make that clear. So we ran the sonar down on day one, down about 2 or 3 miles down that river, and we never saw no sign of Nicola, as did the police for the last 3 weeks with their sonar device either. All I can say is we searched upstream where the bench was, where I actually said there's no way she'd gone in the river at this point by the bench. It's too shallow and she wouldn't have drowned at that point, and she would not have got washed under the weir. And I can say that and I'm happy to do a test at any time to prove that she couldn't have gone in at that point.
Okay, because obviously what people are trying to work out, Peter, is was Nicola Bulley in the river the entire time and not picked up by your search and by the police search, or was she potentially put back into the river?
Potential. It's on a corner. It's a perfect deposition site, and it's right next to a wall. That is a possibility, but I don't want to spark speculation on that. But she was not in the river the day we searched. But the thing is with tidal rivers...
What about where she was found specifically? What about where she was found specifically? Had you specifically... I know you didn't look into the reeds in the riverbed, but the riverbed, did you specifically search there?
Yes, we drove past it with a sonar. It was crystal clear. Nothing.
And
nothing
absolutely no sign. Okay.
No sign. I would see a body extremely clearly on our sonar without fail.
My head around is whether you think that it's possible that you missed Nicola Bulley's body in some way, and that all of the police search teams missed the body too, because I completely agree, we don't want to add to speculation, but you can understand at the moment there are millions of folk around the world saying, well, Peter Faulding said that the body wasn't in the river, so the body must have been put in the river later on, because you've got these 2 dog walkers, one of whom is a psychic, who end up discovering the body, not the police.
Hello all, and welcome back to Mind Juice. I realize that some channels covering Nicola Bulley are very cautious in regards to whom they talk about or dig into regarding this case, which I genuinely do respect, and although I tend to favor this notion or approach, and indeed have no purpose of disregarding this very idea, this content is aimed at discussing whether or not it was a reasonable possibility that the river was in fact the answer the entire time. Now, will there be moments herein where one could gather the impression that I am implying or insinuating questions towards a particular individual or individuals? Sure, absolutely, you bet. But I stress, it is based on an attempt to understand the circumstances, not reckless without critical thought spewing. Don't blame me. The floor for questioning was thrown wide open by the handling of this case from the get-go. Isn't it fair to Nicola that this sense of uneasiness surrounding the whole investigation be faced with the highest degree of scrutiny? I think so. With that said, I unfortunately do not believe, nor have I ever agreed with the police's chief running hypothesis. That is, we have no evidence that is anything but the river. Things just don't add up. Now, I'm not forcing myself to find loopholes, but correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Investigation 101 supposed to be all things considered until ruled out? Not the other way around?
You know, this started with a media problem. And a lot of people have touched on that, where the messaging that came out wasn't quite as balanced as it should have been, and I think that will be looked at. The police, albeit not on purpose, gave the impression that they were really fixed on one particular hypothesis and not the others. And I think then people started to think, well, the family don't believe you, so we're going to come and, come to the scene. And then it became, well, a real circus around the scene itself. But then I think you have to look at the fact that behind the scenes, the police, I have spoken to people, police are doing a really good job, have done a really good job. The conventional things that you would expect to be done.
Reputation has been on the line here, and you feel like you are being made a scapegoat today.
Absolutely, Simon. Dan, sorry. The police have been searching this river for 3 weeks with divers, with side scan sonar, the same equipment as we had, and river search teams plus dogs categorically say that from our sonar footage, which I've since reviewed, Nicola was not laying on the river bed. I can't see into the reeds. I want to make that very clear. And I've always said that to the media. We cannot see into the reeds, but we can see what's under the boat. And I've got a crystal clear image of the actual riverbed.
Now, Simon Harding, the guy who spoke first, acknowledges that it was an unintentional media fault, why the public has the perception that the case was not open-minded. So you can already see the police, Simon operating as a stand-in to defend the policing units, much like a corporate police backing throughout the entire way. If you don't believe me, take a look. We can all understand that Peter Faulding stepped up and offered his services to help, right? Simon Harding is referencing Peter Faulding as the media circus. Look. Further, remember Superintendent Riley in the beginning, 12 to 13 days in? Listen to how close-minded she is and how both Harding and Riley indirectly express their disdain for Mr. Faulding's involvement. Why?
If it's wrong, you've faced a barrage of criticism and out of total respect, I think, for the family, you've given your services for free and you keep coming back. I now read or hear that you're going to be part of a land search. And don't take this the wrong way, I thought your expertise was diving. And again, I would say to you, as I said to Mark, what does it say about this police investigation that there need to be contractors from outside giving their services for free and coming and helping out?
No, actually, Jeremy, my expertise is I've specialised in land search. I've worked on April Jones. I've worked on the Peter Tobin case. I find buried human remains. So that's where I work. So it's awful. This is an awful case, and I just wish it had been handled a lot better in the first place by giving certain information that would have helped us target our search in specific areas.
Are you angry with the police?
I'm not. I understand. I work with the police every day. It's not angry with the police. I'm angry at their comms and the trust. I mean, normally I'm trusted with highly confidential information. It never goes anywhere. And if I'd been told on the day that Nicola was high risk, she was vulnerable, then I would have treated my whole search totally different, and we would have looked at potential other areas with all the expertise we've got. We have our own helicopter up there as well. And, so I understand that they have to withhold certain information. I understand that. But giving it to me would have assisted the operation a lot easier.
Notice here how Peter Faulding says he's mad at their comms, the way the police communicate. And then Simon Harding, don't get me wrong, there are times where he gently critiques police. Maybe they shouldn't have done this or that. But if you can read between the lines, listen to how he responds to the way Peter Faulding smoked their comms.
Simon, pretty damning. Both Mark and Peter saying that the comms, certainly, the media approach, has hindered this case. And you touched upon in our first part about what this family are going through. And one can only imagine now, for Paul and his 2 daughters, hearing this, they must be at their wits' end.
Yeah, and I think a point that Peter makes there, I think there's another side to that, is that Peter, for all the good intentions he has, is not entitled to that information unless he's been brought in by the police. So you wouldn't give Peter certain information about that. So I don't think that, unless he was brought in as a additional...
But here's my question. Why would they allow him to be brought in if they weren't prepared to give him information to help in the search? What's the
Well,
point?
I guess you can't stop him if you don't have the area sealed off. That's one of the issues.
Well, let's ask him, Peter. Did you do this off your own back, or as Simon says, were you? Because you've said I'm annoyed that I didn't have that information, and Simon is implying that you wouldn't have that because the police didn't ask you or what? I don't know. Help me out.
No. I was actually being tasked by the police search advisor by Lancashire Police on this job. I was tasked with specific areas. So I was tasked, actually, Simon, and no disrespect to you, but actually the police were tasking me, the search advisor, the pollster on the scene, as I always get tasked. We offered our services, but I was specifically briefed by the police search advisor on this particular job.
So you can start to see what's at play here. Simon Harding is protecting the shield of the police, that how dare anyone speak up out and against their investigation. He doesn't like how proud of his work and ability Peter Faulding is. So yes, Peter Faulding was tasked by the police, but he wasn't given full reign. That is, when he got there, Superintendent Riley tasked him with specific areas in a stretch of the river his team was assigned to search. He was not given full liberty to utilize his experience, considering the facts of the case, to best address the search as he typically would. Now, the argument cannot be that he is within the funding of the police. He's there on his own free will. Why not let him go all out and go wherever he wants to go? It's his prerogative. It's his cost. There's no reason why you put reins on him. You're looking for a missing person. Why perturb him in his abilities? Now, should he have been given everything? I don't know. Who am I to say? I mean, I respect the integrity of the investigation per se, and do understand how and why particular lines of inquiry may not be privy to his awareness. But it really makes me wonder, why didn't Paul give him these more intimate details as to the vulnerabilities? As he so apparently did, a week later, end up giving such to Mark Thomas, as you will see. Why did Paul not share these with Peter Faulding, yet did turn around a week or so later and share them with Mark Thomas? I'll show you why. Paul's strategy changed, which it shouldn't if his sole focus was to find Nicola from day one. The chief problem with this search from the onset was the police were given too much credence to the word of mouth as to what may have happened to Nicola. Family, namely Paul, remember, he foreshadowed this in the Channel 5 interview, stating the one thing that was odd that morning was that she had everything done earlier than normal. Yeah, and I bet he also suggested that he had witnessed her, I don't know, drinking, etc. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but it's very clear that he illustrated further belief as to why they thought there's no other option. I am not saying, or I don't want to make things up here or add in speculation, obviously the drinking would be, but really think about it. There has to be a reason why the investigation had their teeth so deeply sunk in on the one theory from the get-go. As time went along, it became more evident they were being bamboozled. They refused to acknowledge such out of fear, unwillingness to face the humility it would most likely bring. But we all know this is no way to defend such, for likely it will only amplify said humility in the end, which I believe eventually will happen in this case. Peter Faulding was and is a genuine good human, whom reached out to help, provide his services. Yes, he's confident in his work, but he's not arrogant. He's humble. When asked in the media, he is honest and straightforward. Those of the likes like Simon Harding, the Brotherhood of the Badge, instead follow the tight-lipped doctrine, authoritarian image over selflessness and open regard. In my opinion, this is public service for the people. Peter Faulding gets my vote. As you will see throughout the rest of this episode, I will illustrate to you how this came back to bite the Lancashire Constabulary in the ass hard. They elected pride in their uniform above and over the public outside assistance. Ask yourself, what was there to lose to inform this man with everything that they could potentially help him maximize his assistance for Nicola? Nothing. It's not about the police and having to be the only one who can crack it, but that's what the case was here. Yes, I understand they want to restore their public image, which was very poor before going into this, but as we all know, if you squeeze that bar of soap too hard, it's going to come flying out, as it did here. The media, Peter Faulding, are being framed as the scapegoat as to why this investigation did not go as it should have, and further, are being used as an excuse as to why Becky Smith and the crew did not quite honestly live up to their code. It's that simple. Meanwhile, the real devil in disguise manipulated the whole situation through and through. Don't worry, I'll get there. As soon as attention was shifted away from the water, she was placed there.
Well, I thank SGI for the help that they've given to the team. As I said before, our search has not found Nicola in the river, and then a research in parts by SGI have found the same. That does not mean, as I said a few minutes ago, that Nicola has not been in the river. And in the light of other inquiries being discounted from the investigation so far, although we are keeping an absolutely open mind to anything new, then clearly our main belief is that Nicola did fall into the river. Clearly, Mr. Faulding isn't included within all the investigation detail any more than the members of the public are that I'm briefing through these sorts of press conferences. So we would ask that we be allowed time to continue with those inquiries and to release to the public only what is relevant for them at that time.
Now, I respect and truly do understand how and why Peter Faulding is not per se considered to be involved in the intimate details of the investigation. I really do. He's not an active working police officer, right? But he is indeed an international search expert working with police units routinely across the country. It is Mr. Faulding speaking out his opinion so openly that Nicola was not and is not in the water that they have an issue with. Just wait, it'll all make sense. Why are the police so resistant? Why is Simon Harding playing the role to make him be submissive? Why are they so defensive? Claim to be open-minded, yet as I showed in my previous content, are very clearly not. Their actions on the ground prove this.
Because there is no criminal element yet identified, and we don't expect there to be in this inquiry.
What I can say, which we've established only yesterday, was that if Nicola had left out of the river path and turned right, she has not reached the Great Pub. And we can say that because we have CCTV covering both sides of that pavement.
Because there is no criminal element yet identified, and we don't expect there to be in this inquiry.
So there you heard Superintendent Riley on day 12 and 13. No criminal inquiry, and we don't expect there to be. Then, Senior Investigating Officer Becky Smith, on the 15th, the latest press conference, what can I say? We established only yesterday, February 14th, 17 days after Nicola was missing. They were just then searching for CCTV footage at the Grapes pub to determine whether or not it was able to capture Nicola leaving the Tow River Path area, one of the only exits out of there, without CCTV. They did not establish one of the only exits out of there and look into footage until February 14th, 17 days after she went missing. But yet they're remaining open-minded? Remember, Riley shows they never expected anything but the river. The SIO Becky Smith then reveals not checking into one of the only possible exits from the Grapes until the 14th. Why now? Why then? Guys, what took place the day before this presser when Becky reveals this? Establish this. I'll show you.
Personally, and again, this is just my opinion, I'm 100% convinced it's not the river. People don't just vanish into thin air. It's absolutely impossible. So something has happened. Something has happened. Find out what it is. Find out what it is. My plea now is, personally, I want every house, every garage, every outbuilding, the land scrutinised. I want it all searched. I want it all scrutinised. Every piece of it. And I'm just pleading with them. Just please. Anything, no matter how tiny. Just please, just come forward with it. Please.
Side note, does this sound like he or they are searching for someone still alive? The statement in the interview on the 13th. Paul, I 100% do not believe she is in there. Find out what it is. My plea now is I want every house, garage, every outbuilding, the land scrutinized, all the land, every piece. I'm just pleading with them, no matter how tiny. Does this sound like he's searching for someone still alive? Again, not insinuating, I'm curious. Ask yourself. Yet, on the 15th is the botched presser, followed by the vulnerabilities release, which subsequently resulted in the family statement per Lancashire Police's Facebook, wherein I stated in my last content, it is almost as if the family, which I believe was written by Paul, is suggesting that she is still out there. Don't be scared. Contact us or the missing persons org. But yet, it's contradictory, because in contrast, it proceeds to discuss her struggle with alcohol, menopause, not taking her HRT. This is the cause of the crisis. Like I said, if you have someone vulnerable who has suicidal ideations and is struggling with mental health and these struggles, you wouldn't release this and brandish it to the world, right? But what do? Sugarcoat it and say, reach out, we love you? That family statement tells me that they don't believe she's out there. Matched with the comment on the 13th by Paul, I don't believe she's in the water. I want everything searched. Land scrutinized, every piece, every outbuilding. I mean, is that where she ran away to? I mean, to me, it's very clear that if you read between the lines, he doesn't have the perception she's with us anymore. He was already presuming she was gone on the 13th. The press conference on the 15th marked the shift of the focus of the investigation. I believe indirectly forced by Paul and his plea. That is why they then searched the caravan park. The next day, the CCTV at the Grapes, less heavy on the waterways, 4 days before Nicola was eventually found in the water. Trust me, I will get to the evidence that she could not have possibly been there in the water the entire time. February 15th was the switch, the release of the vulnerabilities. So simply put, the 13th, I 100% do not believe she's in there. Find out what it is. The focus literally shifted away from the river and waters. What's even more nuts is listen to this.
Provided me with information over the last 48 hours, telling me exactly what her state of mind and what was going on. Police hadn't released that. I put them under pressure today and yesterday and said, listen, you've got to be much more open. What is going on? And this afternoon, I got some further information and pressed them on the fact that, what has been the attendance of at this house in relation to the emergency services. And of course, we had this rush press release out this evening. They are changing their strategy. The senior officers within Lancashire have acknowledged that there is some failings here. It's not now, isn't the right time to be reviewing that, but there will be in due course. What we now need to focus on is the reality of where Nicola could be. They are changing their strategy. The senior officers within Lancashire have acknowledged that there is some failings here.
Alrighty, now we're getting into the true mind juice. But first, let me just take a second to thank all of you whom have joined the community. Yesterday actually marked the channel's 2-month anniversary. That's awesome. I appreciate every single one of you who have joined along the journey. If you are enjoying the content, please take a second and give the video a thumbs up. And double down and subscribe if you have not already. The last time I checked, over 95% of my viewers have not yet subscribed. If you prefer not to, that's cool. Just enjoy here today. With that said, I have not made a single penny from any of this. Yes, the channel does now have ad placement, but this is new and minimal. So for the few ignorant comments regarding this idea, let me tell you, If money was my driving motive, I would surely be better off using my education to gain hourly salary invested in an alternative means. Trust me. But for now, I am still new and still learning the ropes. In fact, I actually just turned on the Super Chat and Thanks tab on below the videos, if you've noticed, after I received a notification for it. I didn't even know what that was until a few days ago. I wasn't even aware the feature existed. As you can tell, I'm a new creator, and I don't use that myself when I watch other videos. That was never my intention starting this community. Simply put, investigation, philosophy, psychology stuff is my passion. It gives me a sense of purpose for what that's worth. This channel has been very rewarding to me in that manner. Now, I would eventually someday love to do this full time, of course. Invest more into the channel and forever be an advocate for those individuals out there whom deserve the awareness and further discussion. However, I don't have that luxury at this time. Hopefully someday. But if you are here, you can look forward to improvements as I adapt and learn what software, etc. will best suit my means going forward. So yes, all of my coverage of this case has purely been my draw to Nicola's story. The uneasiness, lack of clarity, etc. I hope that has come across very clear. If it has not, now I hope it is. I guess the best way I can visually metaphor my intentions are perfectly exhibited by the likes of William Dafoe from the Boondock Saints or Will Graham from Hannibal, as you see here. Yes, I understand this is not a movie, but if you have seen the movie or the series I show, you get the point. Approaching it from an investigative, intuitive manner, intending only to be led to the heart of everything that's going on, the truth. Let me be clear. About 5 years ago, I did begin work at a PMIC, which in the US is known as a psychiatric medical institution for children between the ages of 10 and 17, where I remained for 3 years, counseling and coaching these youth struggling with mental health, ranging from low self-esteem all the way to self-harm to 24/7 lockdown monitoring due to suicidal ideations. So yes, I do have an intense respect towards mental health and have spent a lot of time studying and working with those who struggle with such. So just please remember, all of this content that follows considers this and attempts to handle said potentiality with absolute care. Alrighty, enough about me. I just like to share a little get to know every now and again, as I realize it's nice sometimes to better understand who's behind the mic working on the content you are watching. With that said, everybody, let's get into it. Now, let us move on to the River Wyre, the water, where, if we follow the police's chief hypothesis, she remained the entire time. In my opinion, not to play devil's advocate, yet just using research, logic, and understanding of the case throughout the entirety of their search throughout the first 3 weeks, let's really dig into the stretch of water where Nicola would have likely traveled. Now, I will, of course, in contemplation with consideration of the sequence of events that we just went over in the beginning of this video, provide more than just my opinion, better yet seek to implement scientific understanding and explanation. So, can I 100% without a doubt assert that she was in fact placed there where she was eventually found? Well, definitively per se, no. But I do know one thing for certain. She did not enter that water initially at the foot of that bench before the weir. I feel confident in that, and I'll show and explain. Precisely, I want to confront the anomalies of the river trek, the path itself, between where she was last said to have been and where she was eventually found, the weir. If and why they did miss her, if she was in fact there throughout the entire 3 weeks, and further discuss those whom found her and how. Before I jump into it, I want to make a very special note and disclaimer, with sincerity. That is, if you tend to become squeamish and or do not like the topic areas regarding the biological processes of someone being within water, then the upcoming few minutes may not be for you. Once I begin those details, I will remind everyone again, and you can skip ahead if you desire. It will be very brief. Now, to every extent possible, I have attempted to appropriately edit and craft the material so as to avoid unnecessary details. It is not that morbid, let me be clear, but it is indeed more detailed than some prefer to consider. However, I do find it necessary to fully understand and grasp the potential reality here. But for decency purposes, please understand that this is not produced with any disregard of the reality in place here. It is merely provided to establish a basis for thought and perspective, which, as you will see, will undoubtedly tie into the final conclusion, with respect to where Nicola was found. Now, as you observed in the introduction clips and footage, Peter Faulding spoke to his confidence in regards to his underwater search team's ability to use sonar scanning technology, adamantly asserting that the time that he had spent searching, she was not on the riverbed throughout his time there. That is, for the first 1.5 weeks after the incident, as he joined after about 7 days, then searching for another 2 or 3 with his team. Could she have been hidden from view up within the reeds before this time, making it more probable that she would have been missed by the experts and the search teams? That is the ultimate question now, isn't it? Simply, what I am saying is if she had fallen in or chose self-fate, and therefore was within the water throughout the entirety of the 3 weeks, she should and would have had to have been in the reeds to not have been visibly witnessed by anyone looking. For police and experts, underwater search teams peruse that stretch of the river wherein she was found numerous times, day after day, over the course of the search. With that said, I don't think she was, nor possibly could have been, up in the reeds the entire time. For science. Also, taking into account the surrounding geography and anomalies that would have been in play insofar as her positioning is concerned. I'll explain each step of the way, no worries. Now again, I respect with my whole self that she has been found. Rest in peace. And in no way want to disrespect this, yet there are clearly things that do
Nicola
not
went
add up.
missing supposedly here. The mobile phone was found. It was thoroughly searched by police divers, very professionally done. And normally a body would go straight to the bottom. It's been cleared. But if anything has drifted down, if Nicola went in upstream a lot further up, a body could move down this area. So we've been retasked to do this area again. It gives us total confidence that she's not here.
Explain a little bit to me. I know that you're going to be looking further upstream, say you said about a mile and a half. Now, surely a body would move with the flow of the river, so why is it necessary to check upstream as well?
We just need to rule everything out. Nicola, somebody could have put the phone on the bench. Somebody could have found it and put it on the bench, just on the nearest bench. We don't know. Nobody knows. This is a complete mystery, this whole thing. And normally, if somebody falls in the water, if Nicola went in here, her body would have gone straight to the bottom. It would remain there, and police divers would have found her that day, without doubt. It's not entirely.
So what are the chances that she is in this part of the river? Do you think that's quite likely?
She could be in this part of the river. If Nicola is not here, then I don't know where she's gone. She's disappeared off the face of the earth, and I'm pretty confident in saying that.
There's been a lot of speculation that if she has gone past the weir, perhaps she could have reached the sea. Whether or not that's happened yet, if she does end up reaching the sea, what are the chances of ever finding her?
Right, this is a very tidal river, so the tide comes in, the tide goes out. We worked on a job a few years ago where a sheep was being carried down on the current, on the ebbing tide, and on the flooding tide, it would come back to the same place every night, a dead sheep. It didn't move, it didn't go far. If you went missing near an estuary, you could go out to the sea. But things tend to move up and down with the tides. It's an awful long stretch of river with a lot of shallows. She would have been found by now in the shallows. It's that if Nicola had gone in that morning, that day, at this point, I believe, like us, we're divers, that police divers would have found her that day. That's what this mystery is all about. It's very strange. Completely the area where the bench is, about a mile up from the bench, but around where the phone was initially found. So we've done very thorough searches all the way down to the weir. The police divers have dived it 3 times extremely thoroughly, and they are highly competent, and we are, and that area is completely negative. There is no sign of Nicola in that particular area.
Now, yes, although he's a world-renowned expert, Peter Faulding could have made a mistake, per se. I wouldn't deny that. But his resume has often been successful in searches involving tasks at 30 to 50 meters deep and beyond. The River Wyre at this time around the search and her going missing was inches. Heck, even if it were 5, 6, heck, 7, 8 foot deep, this should be like the ABCs to him and his team. I personally witnessed experts here in the U.S. last summer uncover Kylie Rodney, much to the like. If Nicola was in the water 1.5 weeks at the point SGI and Peter Faulding joined, she should have and most likely would have been found. I will get to where she was found, but let's consider first where she was last known to be and the search team's efforts. If you look at the article here that was released a day after Nicola was found, featuring Peter Faulding and his remarks afterwards, Faulding responded to all of the criticism, as he has been made the scapegoat, stating that the side scan sonar his team used does not penetrate the reeds above or below the water. He said, "For 3 days using high-frequency sonar, we thoroughly searched the riverbed, and I can categorically confirm that Nicola was not lying on the riverbed on the days that we searched." Further, he stated that the team searched the stretch of river where the body was found for 4 hours on the first day, then upstream past a wire for 2 subsequent days. So, I do understand there's a lot of confusion and people believing that he didn't go that far. He in fact did, as you heard him confirm earlier in this video. The police underwater search teams were searching for 3 weeks and were also unable to find Nicola. Unfortunately, it was a member of the public that made a grim discovery. With that understood, let's go back to the beginning, where Nicola was last known to be, the bench, where her phone, harness, and Willow were left to be found at approximately 9:33 a.m. First, this is a reminder. I want to briefly discuss what happens to someone when they enter the water, succumb to the elements, i.e. drowning, self-fate, etc., in order to better grasp and understand the reality as to how one is likely to maneuver through such water and geography, given the circumstances upon becoming deceased. Why, you may ask? Is that even relevant? Yes, I in fact believe it is, for it will give you an idea as to how she could have not have possibly went in where she was last known to be. Then I will illustrate via Google Earth and some mapping. In criminal and forensic investigations, it's crucial to know the estimated time of death, or post-mortem interval, known as the PMI. This helps investigators understand when a crime might have occurred, aiding them to explain the conditions one might have been exposed to before and after death, which may help serve as helpful clues. And in this case, I believe they do. Immediately after death, whether the cause is drowning or otherwise self-fate, someone slipped and hit their head on a rock, what have you. If in the water, one will initially sink to the bottom, as Faulding has suggested. Now, I looked into it a little further to understand for my own self. If she, Nicola, were to fall in, and let's say maybe she drowned, it would take an individual approximately 30 to 60 seconds for one to struggle to succumb, depleting all the oxygen out of the lungs before you were to go underwater and then remain there. Not to be too graphic, but it is what it is. So 30 to 60 seconds, that's typical. We don't sink to the bottom when we're alive because of the air in our lungs. Our body's density is different from that of the water. If drowning, the struggle usually knocks all of the air from the lungs, allowing them to fill with water. This causes one then to sink to the bottom. Now, if one falls into the water face first, it might remain floating for some time, as there is still air in the lungs that won't have an avenue to escape immediately. Hence, an example of this would be entering the water already deceased. So if someone had done a dirty act and then placed you into the water face first, and then decided to dispose of you, entering face first, one may remain on the surface for some time, minutes, even up to hours, due to the oxygen being trapped within the body cavity, not having anywhere to escape. Once someone has passed, the immune system is no longer active and working. These microorganisms then begin to turn on the body, breaking it down. It is in this process, which typically is 2 to 3 days, and up to 5 to 8 days in winter or colder temperature waters, as the environment is not as favorable to the bacteria. Why the bacteria? The bacteria is what causes the gases to build up within somebody who's passed away, eventually leading one to again float back to the surface. Much like when one floats while alive due to oxygen in the lungs, once passed away, the gases begin to build up and break down. The same effect happens in terms of body buoyancy, that is. Further, if one is wearing clothes at the time, this is important because a lot of people misinterpret this, as did myself before researching it, believe that this will undoubtedly affect the timing. For instance, the clothing will typically have air trapped, making it more likely to float at a sooner rate, or take it longer for that individual to sink in the first place. One point in myth I want to dispel here: wet clothes only weigh one down when someone is getting out of the water. This concept that clothes aren't heavy in the water is often difficult for people to understand unless they have experienced it for themselves. Advanced life-saving training and some military training involves learning to stay afloat and swim for long periods of time, fully clothed, including wearing shoes. Clothing and shoes while in the water, in actuality, help individuals stay afloat due to there being air trapped within the clothing and materials. So long as one does not repeatedly use swimming strokes above the water surface. This is where it changes. This is the only place wherein clothing becomes heavier once one raises their arm out of the water. I.e., if one has clothes on and swims underneath the surface, like doggy paddles or breaststroke, etc., it does not have that much of a negative effect. It is only if and when someone attempts to swim, raising their arms above the water, wherein the wet clothing weighs one down. In water, while underwater, the clothing does not weigh an individual down. In fact, it traps air, which not as good as a life jacket, but does help to propel someone a little bit more so than being, let's say, completely naked, for instance. So, I guess learning point here, if you ever find yourself slipping in the water in a bad situation, try not to raise your arms above and swim. Try to swim underneath, doggy paddle. Raising them above is what causes the weight. Another myth I found interesting: people drown because they don't know how to swim. This is the common understanding. As we all know, Nicola was known to be a very good swimmer, which is kind of perplexing, right? But the fact is, most people think that swimmers never drown, but research proves that most people who do drown, in fact, were perceived to have been known how to swim. Why? Most often, falling into cold water causes involuntary gasp reflexes, causing one to potentially inhale water and thus panic, leading to drowning. Like I had said, only takes about 30 to 60 seconds. So it does not really matter whether or not you know how to swim. It's the circumstances and the elements, right? Once one's body is back at the surface level, so once someone has passed away, they sink underneath the surface, right, as Faulding suggested. Considering in this case we have cold water, winter season temperatures, it would take about 5 to 8 days for Nicola to have resurfaced. And she would have likely stayed there until all of the gases are released during the last stages of decomposition. So, to answer the direct question as to whether one sinks or floats and when on the timeline, the answer is they do both. Initially, one sinks to the bottom, or after drowning, 30 to 60 seconds. Once the immune system shuts down, the heart stops, one sinks. Then only resurfaces after, considering the circumstances in this case, 5 to 8 days later. Okay? Then, eventually, sinking again after the final stages of decomposition take place. Now, in this case, in cold water, it would be months before the final sinking were to take place. So taking into account the time frame, the search only lasted 23 days. She could not have possibly made it into the final stages, right? So we don't have to worry about that final sinking, okay? So she goes missing that day. If she's in the water the entire time, after approximately 5 to 8 days later, given the temperatures of the water, you can expect, given the biological processes, that she would have resurfaced approximately 5 to 8 days later. Hence, with the 23-day window, again considering the elements of the surrounding environment, she would have likely sunk to the bottom, again like Faulding suggested, then resurfaced 5 to 8, 10 days later, give or take a few. So, given that the incident happened on January 27th, February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, if she had in fact passed away that day or morning, January 27th, where she was known last to be seen, just natural biological processes then conclude, not intending to be disrespectful, you can expect that she would resurface around this time. February 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, give or take a few days, around there. Unless, of course, she was snagged or stuck to some debris undergrowth beneath that surface level, all right? As we know, SGI and Faulding joined the search on Monday, February 6th, approximately day 10 of Nicola being missing. So in reality, she would have likely already risen to the surface at this time, or was close to, for the presence would have been approximately 10 days afterwards, SGI's presence that is. However, given the temperatures and variables, she very likely could have still been on the riverbed. We don't know. However, it is important to note it is at this time wherein she would have been expected to rise to the surface, just by biological processes. Okay? And this is what everybody said was so baffling, right? If this were the case, then she should be here. She's not, right? Sure, we found her down the way a little bit later, less than a mile underneath some tree growth, and I'll get to that, okay? So don't jump the gun. I'll get to that. So, did she simply make it to where she was eventually found up within the reeds before the expert search teams arrived? Explaining as to why she was not found? Hypothetically, without considering the wire in between, or the weir in between, it is possible, I guess, but as you will see, things still don't add up, as there was and is a weir not far down from where she was last reportedly known to be, and this is a problem. Now, in the Kylie Rodney case here in the U.S. last summer, there were police dive teams searching the exact area where she was eventually found for 2 weeks. But the police search teams clearly missed her, and she was underwater, right? So it's not as easy as people without experience out in the public think it is. Police units don't have expertise in training and regimented, apprenticeship where they go and learn all these tactics. They don't use it very often, and it's not like looking at it and it's that clear. But yet, this is where you bring in Peter Faulding and SGI, who's extremely well trained with this scanning equipment, as he so says. They would have found her if she was there. And as he categorically confirmed, she was not on that riverbed. Crystal clear images. So, if there was no foul play, this can only mean one thing. She had to have been up within the reeds along the bank by this time, where she was found. However, this would then presume she was able to overcome the weir, all of the shadows, 4 to 5 bends and turns along the way, all while not being observed by a single member of the search team. Those in boats, those underwater, and those walking along the banks. Or those individuals from the public looking from the bridge or walking along the banks themselves. With that understanding discussed, let's move on to the map. Using this knowledge, confront the trek she would have had to have passed and try to reconsider if it is even possible, reasonably. Alrighty, here we have the path. Starting point of last known where she would have been seen on the lower field by the bench, the phone, and where Willow was found, okay? And then I've drawn out her path here to where she was eventually found, alright? Focus of this portion is between where she was found and then the weir, okay? This distance via the water, because of the bend right here, is 315 meters approximately, okay? 315 meters, or 345 yards, all right? So, hypothetically, let's say she fell in and she drowned, okay? Like I said, 30 to 60 seconds is what it would take for someone to drown, okay? If you're struggling and you're drowning, you're not intentionally swimming this direction, okay? Another thing to be clear, before the weir, this is all non-tidal, okay? This is non-tidal, all right? It doesn't become tidal until afterwards. So for this portion, non-tidal. If she fell in and she was struggling to get back up because it was too steep, struggling to, come to grips, get her traction, whatever, drowning, she couldn't have possibly gotten this far in 30, 60 seconds. 345 yards in 60 seconds, meanwhile, trying not to drown, not possible. It's just not possible. I don't even think you could swim here, Olympic swimming, intentionally towards the weir in 60 seconds. I mean, that is a long ways, even if you're swimming, okay? Now, if she fell in and hit her head and fell, right, she's going to sink to the bottom, like I've already discussed, right? So whether she's drowning, whether she intentionally swam, which, let's say she did fall in and she thought maybe she was going to drown, so she tried to swim further down to get to lower ground, okay? Someone likely would have seen her. If she was able to do that, she could have yelled or screamed, or none of that was reported, okay? Yes, there's rumors about after 9:33. We don't care about that. This is approximately when she was found. Even if she was swimming, she's going to sit here and just hug on to the weir, right? She's not going to intentionally go over. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? So she falls and slips in. She sinks to the bottom, passes out. She goes unconscious. She's going to pass away. She's going to stay in this stretch, right? She's not going to go over the weir, right? And I'll get to that here in a little bit. If she drowns and struggles, she can't possibly get that far and get over, okay? Even if, remember the one witness with the white man, the old dog up here, where their parents' struggle was, and then Willow alerted to the next day. Even if she were to go in somewhere further upstream here and then comes down, it's still not possible for her to go over this weir, and I'll explain that, right? And they intensively searched all of this here, all right? So any of the possible outcomes that you can fathom, right? It would not have been possible for her to go over the weir. Why? Per science, the biological processes, she would have sunk, okay? Sinking is not going to allow her to come over the weir here, all right? It's non-tidal. So here, now, I want to show the weir. If she did go into the water by the bench, where the phone, harness, and Willow were left, she would have passed away within those 315 meters before the weir, causing her to sink to the riverbed. It would not be until, considering the cold water temperature and winter season, approximately 5 to 8 days later, until she naturally would have been expected to rise to the surface, wherein she would even then have a chance to crest over the weir. But remember, at this point, days 5 through 8, even 10, if the variables in the climate and the environment change things a little bit. Search crews were everywhere at day 8. Media was camped out. Out-of-town visitors were coming to town. The traffic after this event, within the first week, I would argue ballooned to more than it likely ever has on a typical day, and continued day after day. Why? They were looking for a missing person. Further, given that the river depth was not that high, the flow coming from this portion of the river before the weir, remember, non-tidal, consider her being a 45-year-old adult female with a winter-style coat on, boots, wellies, etc. Let's say she would have weighed, total with everything, between 100 and 130 pounds max. I'm just guesstimating here, okay? After rising to the surface, given the biological processes, if she did fall in or was somehow put in the water below the bench, upon rising after 5 to 8 days, there would not have been enough inertia or water flow to push her over the weir. She likely just would have stood on the cusp of the weir, stagnant. Even if she did, The matter of fact is, after being underwater for 5 to 8 days, she would have had to have surfaced to go over that weir. But at day 8, there were search parties everywhere. She was not seen by a single soul. Despite the heavy search crews, visitors, etc., she floated over the weir and then somehow miraculously had been lifted over that ledge in the weir naturally? How? Yet no one saw a thing? Further, if she did, she then, remember, in order to go over the weir, had to have surfaced. So with that said, let me be clear. She would have had to have remained surfaced in order to go over the weir, and then 100%, without a doubt, remained surfaced for the rest of her journey to where she was eventually found. Yes, the rest of the journey. That means under the bridge where everybody was standing and tying ribbons. All along that path, she would have had to remain surfaced. Alright, so as you just seen there, the logic behind that, understanding all the biology and everything, she couldn't have possibly fallen and drowned and made her way and then surfaced 5 to 8 days, went over, slipped, hit her head, even intentionally swam. It's not possible. It's not possible, okay? And my number 2 reason why, because you got to remember, this here at the bench where her phone was left on the bench and the harness was left in the grass and Willow was left pacing, was intentionally staged as where she went missing. If you look at the first initial dive and search teams, they're all focused on here, okay? Every single one of them, right? Because if she's suicidal or, she's struggling with HRT and all that, they're going to try to paint the canvases. This is a place she went every morning. This is her, air quotes, happy place, right? Happy place. This is where she would choose to ride off into the sunset, okay? But the logic, not my opinion, if you've listened with an open mind, it is not possible. Literally not possible. Even if she does rise and go over because of flow, at that point, day 5 to 8, there is search parties absolutely everywhere, okay? And then after that point, let's say she does get over. She's floating at this point, okay? She would have had to have remained surfaced the entirety of the rest of the way. Day, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13. This entire way, she had been surfaced. That is when all the spotlight was extremely focused. The ribbons are on the bench. The news crews are doing evening episodes out here. She would have had, look at this, remained surfaced the entire rest of the way. Look at this. There's no way. There's no way, okay? And my number 2 reason, Willow was not found running the bank, okay? Anywhere, okay? He was found running between the bench and the fence because whoever was with Willow last, if you watch that video, I'm going to change the name to it here, to Hope for Justice. If she didn't even go there that morning and the whole thing was staged, right? Or it was Nicola that morning, okay? And someone did take her out a different way, this way up to, there's a getaway vehicle up here on Hope Lane, wherever, okay? Willow is running between the bench and the fence, in my opinion. This is my opinion, okay? Whoever was with him last, whether it be Nicola, Paul, Luis, Emma, someone left Willow there to stage the scene, left through that gate. That's why Willow was running in between the fence and the bench. The scent of Nicola was still on the phone. That's why he was running there. Had she fallen in, whether she was killed beforehand, then thrown in, okay, or she slipped and fell, or she chose self-fate and drowned, or she took a cyanide pill and then jumped in, or you get what I'm saying, okay? Had she entered the water right here, Willow would have been here. Now, I can't prove that, but that's my fact number 2. The number 1 is the biological processes of just how the body acts after dying. She couldn't have possibly swam here intentionally as an Olympic swimmer in 30, 60 seconds, okay? It was too cold of water. Her body would have shut down. she would have had, as we learned, gasping reflexes due to the temperature of the water, okay? Then when she's underwater, she couldn't have made it up. Even if she goes in up here, she's not getting over that weir. And had she gone over it, then implies that she was floating at that point, which means she would have had to float the rest of the entire way. It's not feasible. It's not feasible. Number two, Willow is not along the river's edge. He's between the fence and the bench, because whoever left him there, in my opinion, whoever staged the scene, left that way. Stay, Willow, and he stayed. Okay? He's running frantically because he's never been left there out of the hundreds of times he's been there. She did not go in this way. Okay? Now, 100% without a doubt, Nicola was not last on this green earth by the bench right here. It's not possible. It's not possible. For every reason I just explained. And I think Willow's the exclamation point, okay? So let's say that she is suffering from a mental health lapse or something. Hopefully not. I respect that some people go through dissociative episodes, or they completely disassociate, detach from themselves and the world around them. So let's say that she set the scene, right? And then she tells Willow to stay, and then she wanders here to her own fate, okay? Let's say it, because why? Because it could be possible, right? This here, these 315 meters, it's not possible. Didn't happen. So could she have went out this way? Let's look at that. We know via Becky Smith and the grapes, she couldn't have wandered out this way, plus that's near town, okay? Does she go down the river towpath? Well, then you're saying she walked this entire distance by herself, leaving her dog behind by herself. Not a single other person saw her meandering. No single person, okay? Not a single person, right? She jumps in right here. Not a single person seen her, right? Would she do that? I can't assert that. If she did go in the water by self-fate, or there was drowning, it was not here. It's not possible. For where her body was found, it's not possible. The only way is if she left intentionally Willow behind, so Willow didn't have to see it, and then she left this way. Okay, you can't go back up this way because she's going to be stuck by the weir. She had to have entered after the weir, which would have been here, and then we got the bridge. Okay, and she's not going to go in here and jump off. There's too much traffic. It's not possible, right? Well, I mean, if she has like a, forgive me, with all due respect, like a broken neck or something, that could be a logical conclusion, right? That could be potential, right? Either way, what I'm saying is under her own will, it had to have been after the weir, okay? In my opinion, whoever staged this scenario thinks they're smart, okay? They think they're smarter than their own good. Here's the problem. They didn't consider this aspect, the weir, the water levels that day, the biological processes, how would it look. They literally just thought the river's the answer. They will never know, okay? It's not possible. It's not possible. Then, you know, like I said, does she disassociate and go in up here? I mean, I don't think she's going to go past here. I mean, there's no walkways. After you get to the bridge and the river towpath, there's nowhere to walk. It doesn't mean that she can't walk. That's true. That's very true. Does she disassociate and go down this way? I mean, I guess if it ends up going to trial, you can get a defense attorney to try to argue that, but good luck. Good luck. But then if she does go on up here and she dies, this is all title, right? Like Faulding said, I believe she would have made it further than she did. She would have made it further than she did, remaining underwater this entire time and then getting stuck and coming up. I mean, from a defense attorney standpoint, the only way you can make that argument to stand on its own 2 feet is if she left Willow at the gate and then she exited the towpath and then somehow entered the water after the weir. That's the only possible way. I hope that's clear. That's not my opinion. That's research, science, understanding the biological processes. It's the only way. It's the only way. But then you go to the bridge, and I'll show a picture here. All this under here, all this shallow ground, she didn't get snagged up on that. Nowhere along the way. Like I said, she falls in the water. She doesn't raise for 5 to 8 days. The fact that nobody saw her and this bridge is such a hot spot means she had to have been past that when she rose. She was at the bench. It would have had to have been before she could have possibly went over the weir. She goes over the weir, then she has to be on the surface. Day 8, 9, 10, 11, someone would have seen her. Peter Faulding was there and his search crew was there that way. She's not on the surface. It's not possible. The only way is if she comes out, leaves Willow at the gate, and somehow enters the water and remains under for 5 to 8 days. It is tidal, somehow makes her way down here and gets snugged up into the trees. And if you look, there's not really any other places. We have this tree here. If you look here, what other areas is there undergrowth? And yes, there's like underneath water, okay? But not very clearly. Look at this. Okay, I guess maybe here a little bit. This one isn't all the way in the water. I mean, there's not really anywhere else she could have been snug up underneath to where she wouldn't have been seen. I mean, look. I mean, maybe right here. Maybe right here. But then I think she would have been found there. Because the tidal flow is big, yes, but it's not enough to dislodge her when she gets caught there. Right? And then we make it back to the bridge. And then, like Faulding's also said, after the weir, this little current here is going to be enough to keep her whirling here against the strainer, the grate, something. It's not possible that she fell in by that bench. It's not possible. It would have had to have been after here. Now, like I said, if you've listened throughout this video, sorry if I'm repeating myself, okay? Look at all the bends and the curves that had to have happened here. Let's say she does go in. She's going to have to somehow not get snagged to the point where she can't move and somehow navigate all of these 1, 2, 3, all this narrow bend. Meanwhile, all the searchers looking with sonar don't see her. There's not a ton of reeds up and through here. Those don't happen till down this way, right? Nobody sees her. 5, she gets here. Okay, so when you look at it from a macro perspective, considering all of that, the last press conference was the 15th of February, right, everybody? The 13th is when Paul did the Channel 5 News interview, and he very clearly said, I 100% do not believe she's in the water, right? I want everything done, whatever needs to be done. This flipped, that property search, what have you, okay? Then the next day, or that day, they're searching the caravan park. Then we see that they, just as of yesterday, as Becky Smith stated, we saw that grape, she didn't leave that way. So that's when they're really starting to look elsewhere, okay? Then you hear Mike Thomas state in that news interview on the night of the 15th when the vulnerabilities were released that he talked to police and the SIO, which would be Becky Smith, admitted to making some wrong moves, which I think is cool. That's awesome that she was willing to admit that. And they very clearly said they were changing their plan and strategy on the 15th. Right? That Wednesday. Then, once the direction is changed away from the river, not as much focus, and I'll show you another video here that will show that. Miraculously, like I've said in other videos, if someone did do something to her, their best bet is to at some point put her back into the river because it fits the police's theory. They're not going to want to be wrong. And that's what I'm afraid of. Is now what's going to come down to is if the police are going to save face and just call it a drowning, whether it's not, just so they can save their face, or they're going to categorically have to come out and say, we were wrong. She was found in the water, yes, like we originally thought she would be, but I don't know if they'll do that. I hope they do, okay? But here's the next thing. After all this inconsistencies, right? Okay, not being seen, the only frickin' place deposition site is right next to a damn road, okay? By itself, I don't think you can claim that. How convenient is that? How convenient is that? What, less than a week after the police suggest that they're going to change their strategy? Once the individual who has her knows that the heat isn't as much on the river, and then on the February 9th, which is the week before this, they go out and check Morecambe Bay, which is all the way out here. If you follow this river out here, follow it all the way up here. When we get out to the estuary, right? They're already looking out here on February 9th. So somehow these cops are presuming that she could have made it all the way out here to the bay February 9th, out here. And as Faulding says, I'm really surprised she only made it that far. Well, you know why? Because she wasn't in the river the entire time. She wasn't in the river the entire time. After the police switched their mode of strategy, which was initiated by Paul, which I think he felt clear to do it under the wing of Faulding, somehow they pulled up here at some point and then went and stuck her and stashed her underneath the damn tree here, okay? And like I said, I'm not errantly saying that. It's connecting all the dots with everything I've set up into this point, okay? Like Faulding said, he's surprised she didn't make it further. Well, the police thought she went out to the freaking bay already, which is another, miles and miles and miles, okay? But yet she didn't. She only made it to right here, less than a mile away, where Faulding did search. Yes, they don't check in the reeds, but that would presume if she fell in the water, she would have had to have been here the entire time. But she couldn't have went over the weir till after day 5 to 8. That means day 9 through 23, she's floating on the surface up here, all the way down the damn thing. Meanwhile, Faulding and crew, SGI, and the cops are searching, and they somehow don't see her. Let's say she goes over day 5, 6, 7, 8. Faulding and crew were there on day 9, 10. So within 2 days, she goes over and then goes all the way here and is hidden up in the reeds. In 2 days? I don't think so. The water levels weren't that high at all. They were minuscule, okay? The fact that it's right next to the road, out in a rural area, mixed with everything I just said, it's extremely clear she was placed here. And I think they already know that because of, yes, they're going to do an inquest, which will last up to 6 months. But it's very clear that they have to be able to tell if there's any, gunshots or anything like that. They would be able to tell what the cause of death is if it was external. Now, was this person smart and they waterboarded her to make it look like she drowned? I don't know. That's getting skeptical and going down rabbit holes. I'm not going to go that far. But yeah, that's what I wanted to show you on the map here. And now I want to go into revisit the Nicola Bulley case YouTube guy, well now Curtis Media, and the psychic who found her in some anomalies that are in his statement. And then I also want to underscore Paul a little bit here and some things he said after the fact, okay? So real briefly, I want to squeeze in a further comment on the Nicola Bulley case YouTuber, which is now Curtis Media, that I was kind of hard on in the last video. He has since uploaded quite a few new content, and his channel has grown significantly. A few of the recent videos posted give off a voyeur vibe. If you ask me, I'll show them here, which doesn't mean a darn thing. I respect that. Maybe that's just his lens of reporting, and hey, that's cool. Further, I appreciate that he did end up taking down that removal of Nicola video that he had up. I don't know if it was due to backlash he got from the Mind Juice community here, as I did receive a bunch of emails regarding this, stating that they messaged him, reported it, etc. So, those of you whom did, thank you. I'm sure the family appreciates that. I mean, that would be pretty cool if it was generated from the community here to say that we did something to impact the case. Anyhow, yes, there are things he says that seem a bit suspicious. Not gonna lie there, but I'm at the point that I think he is merely a YouTuber on the ground, attempting to cover it the best he can. So I acknowledge I was a little rough on him, and that's on me. I apologize, Curtis Media. With that said, I want to share with you a recent video and comment he had wherein he stresses that after the police shifted their focus past the weir out to the bay, which we know is February 9th, this YouTuber, stated that he visited this exact spot where Nicola was eventually found on 4 separate occasions in between the 9th and when she was found, and did not see police presence anywhere, nor any divers in the area.
So what I did that day is I looked downstream to try and get some videos of these police officers in the river, right? That was the idea. Now, I went directly past that location where Nicola's been found. And apart from thinking to myself it was a little bit spooky there and a little bit hidden, there were no policemen there. The area was completely deserted. And that road weaves in and out of the countryside, but it more or less follows the river, give or take, down to a bridge, which is about 4 or 5 miles away. And even down there, I got out the car numerous times down on that journey, went up to the riverbank to have a look, to try and get some videos of these police divers, and there were none to be seen. And then since that day, I've been up there 4 more times to take videos and stuff, and I haven't seen any police down that part of the river where she was found. I'm not saying they haven't been there, but I haven't seen them in that time. I even asked one of the police, I said, where are the divers? Because I'd like to go down there and get a video of them in the water. And he said, I don't know where they are. I believe they're at the estuary. Do we think perhaps they skipped that area and they just presumed, oh, well, you know, if Nicola's gone over the weir, she must have gone right downstream. Do we think they missed that area completely? I don't know. Personally, like a lot of people, I still think something untoward has happened here and suspicious, but without speculating anymore, we'll wait for the results to come out. Now, that little area right there is next to the school where she parked her car. Again, it doesn't really matter now, but I had a look around there, and
So there, Curtis Media, what you just watched, is him referring to after the police announced they were switching their search team and focus out to the sea, Morecambe Bay, which we know is February 9th. Now, I went directly past, stating him, now I went directly past that location where Nicola's been found, and apart from thinking it was a little bit spooky there and a little bit hidden, there were no policemen there. The area was completely deserted. So he's reflecting back to the times he visited this spot prior to her being found. I got out of the car numerous times on that journey, down to the riverbank to get a video of the divers. Since that day, I have been down there 4 more times. Haven't seen any police down where she was found. Do we presume they skipped that area? I don't know, do you? Then, that little area there, through the trees, as he talks at the end, is next to the school where Nicola parks her car, drops her kids off for school. Now, my first thought, mind juice, was, holy smokes, this dude, there were 4 days after the police focus shift, Wednesday the February 15th, their last presser, when they released the vulnerabilities, between then and when she was eventually found. It's odd that he states 4 times having went there in between the 9th and 23rd. Further, it felt spooky, and he then underscores there was no police presence. I am presuming he is now reflecting back, and in his memory is now after the fact asserting that it was spooky. How can you go down there where she was found, before she was, and claim that at that time it felt spooky, meanwhile reiterating the lack of police presence, further, that it was hidden, then peering through some trees commenting that that's where Nicola parks and drops her kids off? Yo, I couldn't see a school, but why make it look so voyeuristic and creepy? It's not hard to let the mind wander. What if someone was watching her park her car, like I've said in the past? Then here he goes and presents it. I don't get it. I have to just presume he is not thinking much about what he is saying, how it comes across after the fact. But geesh, almighty. Further, didn't it look like Peter Lawson was deadlocked on him in that video of the presser he was taking? Okay, I'm done. I'm not going to keep drilling him. I genuinely do not think it has anything to do with it, but it's very interesting. Now, I would imagine someone wanting to find a time to stash Nicola back into the river to match the police hypothesis, as I said in my very first video, would do exactly this. Scout, look for an appropriate time when the coast is clear. I personally, in my bones, feel like the cause and answer is closer to home. Sincerely. But wow, does this Curtis Media know how to raise the red flags, for what it's worth. So, no, I'm not further stating, see, look, it's him, he's suspicious. But it's odd. And I wanted to share it for more of the idea, I guess, that he was there numerous times where she was found, as he states, and did not see any police presence in the area. I just wish he wouldn't say these things that make him sound so sketchy, I guess. But hey, that's my perspective and doesn't mean anything. Keep doing you, mate. I'll back off and wish you the best of luck going forward. In his most recent account, he suggests the potential of two other missing persons, Daniel Hives and Peter Baglin, as potentially being linked to the case of Nicola Bulley, as they both went missing next to the water, canal, river. Items were also left behind. One was on December 28th, while the other one was January 28th. But both of them went missing at nighttime. I understand how one might want to connect, but here, personally, I don't think there is a connection whatsoever. For if you are to suggest there is, then such would be classified as a serial killer, right? 3 separate killings on 3 different dates. I just don't think so. Sure, that next to the water is similar, but the time of day is off. Nicola was in a well-traveled small community of 642 residents. Early morning, female, doesn't match. The other 2 are still missing. Nicola was found. I don't think so. Unfortunately, this is why. Unfortunately, the reality is a lot of people go missing for various reasons. And although they are semi-close in area and distance, I just can't see the connection here. It's easy to go down that way, but I don't see it. So I will not be covering that any further. I mean, Nicola was in a well-traveled area. It had to have been someone who knew her routine and someone that was close. And then the first one happened December 28th. So what? Then he goes January 27th, 9 in the morning, and then turns around the next day and hits another one. It just doesn't match. The MO doesn't match. It sounds nice, but it doesn't match. Alrighty, moving on. As we know, the case is now in a status of inquest, which does not necessarily reveal much on its face. We do not have said process here in the US, so I had to do a little research. Simply put, it is a judicial inquiry to ascertain the facts relating to an incident, such as death. Now, that is the extent of the inquest I will discuss here. And further, also that I have heard and found out that it typically takes up to 6 months to complete. And further, that potentially June we could expect some results and answers as to what may have happened. We'll have to wait and see. I guess the one good thing I take from this is that it is indeed outside of the Lancashire Constabulary's rule now, which I consider a good thing, for I am skeptical as to how they will write this one out, the Lancashire Constabulary that is, and particularly the police involved in this case. They already have the Shadow Secretary and Prime Minister breathing down their neck, as well as the watchdog. It would be in their best interest, no matter how bad it sounds, coming from me, to conclude it matched their theory the entire time. For in fact, if they do find foul play, they clearly did not build up the necessary evidence to charge anyone throughout the course of this investigation, given their fixated focus. Now, I'm not saying that such is still not possible. It definitely indeed is. In fact, I would imagine they are working on such right now. I would bet that they were so dead set on the river theory because, hear me out, this is why I think they were so dead set on it. Number one, Paul expressed his concern regarding Nicola's mental status, mentioning self-harm, what have you. He could have said, that morning, he already said something was a little off. She appeared to get things ready a little bit early. Number two, also hearing the same tone and fear from her sister Louise. Heck, she even sent Nicola a confirmation packet on her phone so that she could confirm their spa getaway that, as we all know, was left unanswered. Now, it didn't stick out to me at first, but it does now. Being in the police's shoes with those 2 points raised, without knowing any different at that time, this concern and fear she did something to herself, coming both from her partner, the dad of their 2 children, as well as her biological sister, together gives it a strong family notion and idea, which one can begin to understand why the police, SIO Becky Smith, may have too heavily focused on that one avenue so strongly out the gate. Further, all of the family statements don't sound like family statements. Yes, and I bet the family underlying those, now that I have had some more time to study, dig, and think about it, is being orchestrated by Paul and Louise, not her father and mother. I could go on and on and on regarding this idea theory, But maybe that will be another day or episode. I haven't decided yet. Let me know if you would like to hear further in this regard. Again, my intention on this channel is not to create content on different theories and rabbit holes. It could be, I honestly think, with the evidence that's there, Paul's at fault here. There's something up with him. I just can't pin down who the female is. Okay? So would I be doing this for purposes of this investigation further? Yes. Okay? Now, I realize I'm sticking my neck out there if I'm wrong down the road, but I'm willing to accept that. I'm willing to stick my neck out there. Okay? Again, why? Because I feel Paul is 100% behind this. But someone else, a female, was at his side. Yes, I have alleged Emma before, but now I'm beginning to think it's Louise instead. Look at the way her mother stares her down as she talks, then looks up at her husband, back to Louise. After Louise gives her bit and talks, she goes straight for that water glass now, doesn't she? Now, I'm not saying that means anything, but you can kind of pick up and read the tension between Louise and her parents here, okay? Look, people. Yes, I watched the behavioral panel, and I have been bummed out by their stance from day one. Not to say I know any better, because I honestly don't. But one thing I want to make clear. Their singular focus is to consider expressions, word usage, behavior. That is it. Yes, I respect their words and analysis, but I believe that they have missed the boat here. Something is not right with Paul. I don't know how you can look at it and say otherwise. He's never been straight and narrow. I just want to make that clear. Just like a lie detector test, much like the behavioral assessment, they are faulty to some extent. There is a reason said opinions are not validated in a court of law. Further, and I'm not being skeptical here, I'm just furthering my point. If one were to be, let's say, a socio or a psychopath, no, I'm not alleging, again, just stating fact. If one were psychiatrically considered such, they would not be able to distinctly be assessed or their abnormalities be pulled out in an individual by people such as the behavioral panel. Enough of that. Continuing on. The only guilt and shame I personally here at Mind Juice feel about this entire series I have done on Nicola is for whichever one of those two women, Emma, Louise, whom are not the lady by his side. I feel bad for suggesting their name and going down that route, but I do now know that with absolute clarity, yet which one is involved. Emma is an easy guess. I mean, come on. Check my Hope for Justice piece out and you will hear it. But I think she may have the wool pulled over her eyes, leaving Louise. They scripted it all out, planned it. Spa getaway. They both state the same exact things, vanish into thin air, round and round, not getting anywhere. The family statement after the vulnerabilities, releasing the HRT, menopause, struggles with alcohol. This is the cause of the crisis. Family. Whom would you feel safest with, carrying something like this out with? Family, blood, sister, Louise. Emma is married, has her own family. The hardest case to prove would be within the walls, her sister. Plus, she moves in to take care of the kids from here on out. Sure, one could be skeptical, but technically, on its face, it would make sense, right? Oh, come on, man, it's your sister. Yeah, and that doesn't matter to me. Her mother, Dot, says they were so tight and close, as was claimed initially, but where the hell has she been? Where the hell has she been? Have you seen her absolutely anywhere? I haven't. In the statements, doubling down on her script with Paul. Enough about that. Phew. Like I said, I may be getting into more detail on that. I didn't even plan on saying it here today, but I just had to get it off my chest. Now, the individuals whom found Nicola, the psychic. Now, what is odd to me is that she was not in the open, visible for anyone to see. As you can see in this picture here, he had to go down to the bank and point this specific area out to police. Did he have a premonition that told or showed him this? Well, that isn't my place. I don't have a psychic ability, unfortunately, so I will not tread on those who do, I guess. That would be arrogant of me to conclude. It's possible, I guess, right? I mean, it has to be. I mean, it's now happened apparently twice. I mean, good for him. Now, in this article, a few comments he made without saying much really told me a lot. Jason Dean Rothwell. He and a friend were seen alongside the River Wyre at the weekend, appearing to assist police with the location and recovery of a body. Jason said he wasn't asked by police or Nicola's family to help out, but that it was his gift that compelled him to try and help. In a statement, he also added that he had previously helped with the recovery of Michael Brooks, a 19-year-old who was found in a river in Lancashire after, similarly, a 3-week search in February of 2018. It is with great regret that I have to address the issue at this time, Jason says, but due to a wide number of private inquiries and threads now circulating on YouTube and TikTok, I feel I should put a brief statement out. As has obviously become apparent, yes, it is myself in the images in the media currently circulating relating to the case of Nicola Bulley. And yes, yesterday morning it was myself and a friend who reported and then assisted police in recovery of a body from the River Wyre. Such as it would be inappropriate of me to discuss any further detail, anything we may know about the body at this time, considering a formal identification of that body has yet to be confirmed. This doesn't say much, it's boilerplate, but I'll read that again. To me, this is interesting. We may know it would be inappropriate of me to discuss in any further detail anything we may know about that body at this time. So he knows something, or he believes he may know something. If it was simply a body, we found it, we don't know the identity, he wouldn't say this, okay? We may know about the body at this time. This, to me, is there's something obviously there. You know, was it another cause of death? We don't know. Okay? I would also like to say a huge thank you to Lancashire Police for their help, support, and the open-mindedness which they dealt with us. Following our call, spiritualists or mediums are obviously not something police come across every day, and I appreciate the respect given to both of us. I mean, and that is cool. They were given that respect. At the end of the day, it's about finding Nicola, no matter how that is. So it is also important to mention, Jason states, I was not asked by the police or Nicola's family to become involved, but having seen the wild speculation and hurtful commentary that has been ongoing, and having previously assisted in the recovery of Michael Brooks, I decided to use whatever gift it was we as mediums possess and try to locate Nicola Bulley. I would, however, stress again, I cannot confirm that the body we traced yesterday is that of a lady in question. I'd be really curious what they mean by traced. You know, like, were they just on a walk and happened to find something and now he's calling it traced? I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I have no right to say that, but that's interesting. I would add as a final note, I will not be giving any further information or commentary at this time regarding the work involved in finding this person. See, that's interesting. Regarding the work involved finding this person. Nor is it my place to engage in any discussion on how that body originally came to be in the water. So this here, to be straightforward, doesn't actually mean anything, because he may have a philosophy or perspective or a reading that he did that gave him this idea or narrative, and then they, by happenstance, find the body, but yet his narrative might not match. You see what I'm saying? So the fact that he earlier says, will not discuss any further detail, anything we may know about that body at this time, and then later says, nor is it my place to engage in any discussion on how that body came to originally be in the water. Came to be originally in the water is implying that it wasn't drowning or anything like that. And as I showed you, it's not possible through the bench. So he is suggesting here, between the lines, anything we may know about that body at this time, and then further to engage in discussion how that body came originally to be in the water. He is suggesting indirectly that there's more to it. Okay? Now, one last highlight note, or just wait, yeah, that I want to make on him here is the Curtis Media guy is out there that day on a countryside stroll, right? And he catches these two on the side of the road and he films them. And this Jason Dean guy kind of looks at him and puts his hand over his mouth. There's like an awkward tension there, you know? So, I mean, if this is this medium psychic, did he have weird vibes of this guy? I don't know. It's interesting. But to me, the psychic, thing, I don't think there's any suspicion there whatsoever, to be honest with you. I think they were shocked, and you can see that in the video, but I think his response to this countryside stroll guy who claimed to be, I have no idea what's going on, is kind of telling too. And then, now that I'm wrapping up here, there is one last part of this piece in this episode I want to share with you to end on a high note. I want to leave everyone with today to consider in the next hours or days, have you. Really think about it. And it includes the last press conference, wherein Peter Lawson and his colleague announced the identification of Nicola Bulley, followed by a family statement read out by the lady. There is one particular aspect I want to hit on, following up on the Louise-Paul connection. I believe supports my thesis. Where I am today. Here, take a listen.
And it saddens us to think that one day we will have to explain to them that the press and members of the public accuse their dad of wrongdoing, misquoted and vilified friends and family. This is absolutely appalling. They have to be held accountable. This cannot happen to another family. That the press and members of the public accuse their dad of wrongdoing, misquoted and vilified friends and family.
Saddens us that one day the girls will have to learn that the media and the public have accused their dad of wrongdoing, misquoted and vilified friends and family. They have to be held accountable. Yes, I am from America. I understand things may be different across the pond. But hear me out. I reckon that the press, Sky News, GB News, ITV, all those that have covered this case, all of the telly stations, never once directly insinuated Paul's involvement. How could they? They can't. They contacted him afterwards and asked for an interview, and they got scalded for it. It is those like myself here at Mind Juice and all the other YouTube creators going so far as comparing him to Chris Watts, which I can agree does tend to go a little far, okay? But this is the true nature of social media, and it sucks. I agree. I would hate to be in that position. But I would never conspire to do something like this either, okay? If he were innocent, had nothing to do with Nicola's fate, he would not state this in the final identification presser. Really think about it. Someday down the road, unfortunately, I am sure Nicola's two daughters will indeed look into their mother's case. But I promise, the one for certain piece they will undoubtedly see, without a doubt, is the one wherein her identification is confirmed. The presser you just observed. Why then go so far as to say those who accuse their dad of wrongdoing further vilified their friends and family? I guess if they were going to address it, they would be more vanilla. Such as, saddens us that one day we'll have to explain to our girls the turmoil and erroneous speculation that has been directed at our family. Period. Period. To specify their dad, vilified friends and family, which is an umbrella for Luis. Paul, you keep making mistakes there, bud. He is doing this, stating it here to make those like myself and others whom have went way further, to make them feel embarrassed, to make them feel bad. Why? Because they found her. Dude, from my perspective, this only makes you look worse. He is attempting to, in turn, again, using Nicola, to cast shame and guilt towards those whom have speculated against him. Leave us alone. People, with all sincerity here, if he was innocent, he would not go and specify whom accused their dad. If his girls ever watch any piece ever, it will be her identification, official word, Nicola Bulley. Why then would you plug this assertion, giving them a reason to want to know what this means, what was said? Well, I'll tell you, because you didn't think that far. Okay? But that's the reality. Yes, I have no idea how it would feel to be in his position. I understand that. But even if it was 10 times worse and you were innocent, you still don't directly state that. You just don't. Because he, again, thinks he is outsmarting everyone. He's not. And does not realize, for the umpteenth time, that he is giving himself away. He again is stating this to cast shame and doubt, make people feel bad for doing such. To me, Paul, this only dilates my pupils and hones in on your ass even harder. Pardon my language. You get the point. Really think about it, please. His intention is to cast shame and doubt, wherein the very thing he's attempting to achieve, shield his daughters, is in fact in reverse stating such in the once piece they will eventually see. But he's not thinking about it like that. He's a little concerned and panicked and worried, so he's going to say that to make people feel like shit because she's been found, and 90% of them will be like, okay, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. This is not sorrow, pain, and sadness. How dare you people? This is anger coming out. Leave us alone. I'm not. And yes, if there is evidence that does definitively come out down the line one day that is not suspicious, save face operated, I will indeed apologize full-heartedly. However, I realize after going this far, it will be useless because he's going to think I'm pond scum. But hey, a spade is a spade. For Nicola, given all the evidence, I feel it. It's intuition. If a psychic can find her resting place, why can't I step out there and say all these coincidences aren't coincidences? Why? And that's not a mock. I'm being sincere. If you've listened to everything I've had to say here and really consider it, to go in the final presser and to say those have accused our... Now, I get it. 98% of people who hear that aren't going to think much about it. No, I'm not saying that makes me special or different. No. But because I've spent way too much of my personal time, and that's my fault, diving into this. His use of words don't make sense, right? Further, whom else in the family has been casted suspicion towards? Honestly. Dad, mom? No. Friends, yes. I mean, I'm guilty of that. Emma, you know. And like I said, this is so unlike me. I usually don't. And you guys will see with future cases, like, I don't usually do this. I'm usually on the other side of the fence. Like, shaming those that do. This case is different. This is different. The only other one in the family that suspicion's been brought towards is Louise. Okay? So again, like I said a little bit earlier, just like the family statements in the Facebook on the 15th about the vulnerabilities, family statement, guys, it is a Paul and Louise statement. Paul and Louise are the ones why the cops focus so hard on the river. Okay? Much like the family statement, I said that. They, Paul, Louise, attempt this same tactic, yet they didn't realize they failed there too. If you genuinely were interested in finding her, Nicola that is, you really didn't know the fate, what had happened at that point on the 15th after the presser, you wouldn't release all of those vulnerabilities that clearly, would only send her into a deeper and darker place. If you still had hope via the yellow ribbon and how you stress she's in such a bad mental place and she could take her own life and, you know, she's shaky, you're not going to go out and do the exact thing that would cause her to be in such a dark place. Right? Again, trying to play the we care card, yet it falls flat on its face. It's a red herring. Now, if you were still with me and not gotten all upset thinking I know everything I'm talking about, no, guys, I'm completely open, humble, and again, I will apologize, I swear, on everything that I will. You gotta remember, I'm risking the entire reputation of this channel by doing this, okay? Yes, I 100% understand how far on a limb I am suggesting this is with such certainty, but please, no, it is not baseless. But as you have observed over my coverage of this case, Nicola did not go into that water below that bench. Science and Willow show that. Paul and Louise most likely spent a long time planning this out. Just not quite good enough. Now, even going so far as calling out media stations by name, Sky News, ITV. Yes, their actions, I guess, were very much unethical, right? But again, does this come across as sorrow, pain, etc., or direct anger? Anger it is. Now, you have the media, if you've been reading the articles, playing right into their hand, afraid, coddling, pieces with soft and comforting tone. I pray to God that those investigators have caught on to all these games and that those observing this inquest really get to the bottom of what's going on. The truth is, if there was foul play, which you know how I feel, they will have to acknowledge their failure from the start. Own up to it and then publicly own it. One of the hardest things for humans to do is to admit being wrong, especially in such a role and organization facing so many people. But the silver lining here is, if they do want to restore trust in the public with the police, I know it doesn't sound like it, but sincerely, finally being humble, owning humility and getting it right, will do just that. I pray that true justice does shine through. That inquest, that autopsy, will have the answers. Nicola did not fall in by accident. She did not choose self-fate. I'm not there. How could you possibly know? You're right. It's not one or two things that tell me it. It's 15 coincidences. Well, if you learn, I was a major in philosophy, there's no such thing. Okay? Now, does that prove my case? No. I'm not going to keep going. And I apologize if I've lost people following me here. But if you're still here, I sincerely thank you. I really do. You guys are all the best. You guys are the real, true mind juicers. I don't know if I'll be doing another piece on this. We'll see. I could definitely do one going further into the Paul and Louise thing. But that's not really my cup of tea. I don't like to just focus on that. But for me, it's all a part of the inconsistencies in the River Wyre where she was found. So I had to call it out, get it off my chest so that I personally can move on and just trust that things will be handled, But if you really think about that last point that I showed you, if you were innocent as a father, all you dads out there, or all you women out there, is that normal to put in a family statement? The one piece your daughters are going to see that have accused their dad of wrongdoing. That is reverse psychology getting against the people to keep the heat off of him. Okay, which shows that he's a little worried about it, which is a good thing. So hopefully the police are looking his way a little bit. But that family statement and that final presser wasn't sad and sorrow. It was vitriol, anger, spewing venom. He's pissed. He's scared. That's what that is. That's what that is. Every time that man puts himself in front of that camera, the real colors shine through. The real colors shine through. Until next time, everybody, mind juice out.